What's up, guys? In today's video, we're going to be checking out a new plugin from Softube called the TubeTech Blue Tone. So what this plugin does is it takes the TubeTech SMC2B multiband compressor and the TubeTech equalizers and combines them into one plugin. Now, if you've checked out either of those plugins, especially the SMC2B multiband compressor, you will notice that it is quite a deep dive to get the settings correct. And so the goal of Blue Tone, at least in my opinion, from what I think Softube's doing, is making a very simplified version of that, combining the EQ and the compression to give you the great tone that TubeTech always creates. And while I'm not always a fan of one knob plugins, I think they've done a really good job of creating something that can be used by beginners to get that TubeTech sound and get a good sounding vocal or drum or whatnot really fast. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, guys, so as you can see, this plugin is super simple, so it's going to be a pretty quick video. But as you can see, it has this amount knob, and that is what you would expect. It is the amount of compression and EQ and all the stuff it's doing under the hood that you feed into it. They say that 50% is the sweet spot, and I've found that to be pretty true. Then on the right, you have the different settings. So you have vocal clarity and then vocal focus. They both sound slightly different. Vocal clarity seems a little bit brighter to me, while vocal focus keeps some of the low end, but it's a bit harder of a compression sound. And then you have mix bus wide. We'll check out all these drums, so on and so forth. Then below you have an equalizer. Now this equalizer is to help balance out the sound. So if you find something like, say, the vocal focus is sounding good, but maybe it's a little too bright, you can turn the high band down a touch and maybe get it a little bit closer to what you're trying to go for with your vocal sound. Same for the low band. If you feel like you need a little more low end, a little less low end, you can turn it up or down. And then lastly, the output section is dry and wet, which lets you blend the dry and the wet signal, as you might have guessed. And then the final knob, which is gain, which I wish they did a little bit better job of gain matching this thing. I've always found I'm like turning it down -4. That's fine. I understand you're adding a lot of processing, but it would have been cool if there was like an auto gain in there. The music we're using is from a mix I did for this group La Rebelle. The song is called Bye Bye Mon Cowboy. Make sure to check them out on all the streaming platforms. And what we're going to do first is take a listen to the drums. So this is a drum set. It's not really mixed. It's just the stems with the panning on and so forth. We're using the drum bus setting, and I just have it a little bit above 50. So let me bypass it first, and then we'll turn it on so you guys can hear the difference. So pretty cool. It's doing a lot of stuff under the hood. You can hear the snare gets more present. Some of the boxiness gets cleaned out a bit. Everything becomes forward more. So it sounds better. Like that's been my case with this. Whenever I put it on something, I'm like, that's better. I like that with it on more. So cool to use on drum bus. Let's move on to basses. All right, so here's the bass line for this song. Got it on the bass instrument setting. Dry wet set 100, and the amount was set at 50. So let's hear it before and then after. So a little less noticeable than on the drum example, but you do hear the bass kind of come out a bit more, a little more presence in the high end. Let's try pushing this one and just see what it does if we go all the way to 100 on it. So we were able to change the tone a bit. I mean, it definitely got maybe over compressed, but by boosting up the high band a bit, we were able to get a little more of the finger noise and a little more presence out of the bass that might make it useful for an actual mix. Let's move on to guitars. Okay, so for this setting, it's much like the same. We have the keys and guitars setting I'm using. There's also stereo guitars wide one, but this is just a mono guitar, so we'll just stick with that one. Got it at about 65%, and same thing, completely wet. So this is without it, and then I'll turn it on. So I like what that does a lot. And I've been using this on guitars a bit. You just put it on. It just gives a little more presence, a little more sweetness, controls the guitar just a touch, but just sounds better once you put it on there. And that could be, the tone of the tubes and all that just make this thing stand out quite a bit more. All right, last, let's go to vocals. Here's the vocal track. Just like the other ones, let's do it bypassed. And then what I'm gonna do a little bit different on this is we'll start with vocal clarity, and then I'll switch it to vocal focus, and then probably back again, just so you guys can hear the difference between the two vocal settings.
Bye bye, mon cowboy. Bye bye, mon rodéo. Ça c'est dur de tomber si bas quand t'as été si haut. Bye bye, mon héros. Bye bye, mon gigolo. Les femmes te brûlent un peu trop.
Okay, so as you guys can hear the difference, the vocal clarity is a bit clearer, a bit brighter. The vocal focus isn't quite as bright, but definitely compressed more. So you have two different sounds you can go with as far as your vocal settings if you're using this for vocals. And what I've found is this is sometimes a good plugin to put on first. Just get a dB or two of compression. I've been using the vocal focus a bit more because sometimes the clarity to my ears is just a little too bright. But that's a good starter plugin, and then you can add more detailed stuff if you need after that. So that's a good way I've been using it. One last thing, let's just crank it all the way up and see what it sounds like really hardly. So one last thing with this vocal, let's just crank up the amount and just see what it sounds like with a bit more compression and stuff happening under the hood.
Bye bye, mon cowboy. Bye bye, mon rodéo. Ça c'est dur de tomber si bas quand t'as été si haut. Bye bye, mon héros. Bye bye, mon gigolo. Les femmes te brûlent un peu trop. Fais bien attention de tomber à l'eau.
So that's another way you can use it too, is a parallel compressor, putting it at the end of your chain and just dialing back the dry wet amount on it so that you just have parallel compression instead of the full-blown tone. Okay guys, so that is a TubeTech Blue Tone plugin. I thought it was really cool, so I wanted to make a video of it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you need your song mixed and mastered, hit me up at mixandmastermysong.com. You can also find my courses and presets there too. Talk to you soon.